have a really prompt start today. It's practically revolutionary, but we're going for it. So, what I was going to start off by doing, I know that there are people here who've been to these talks before and who know about Lindens, but there's also an awful lot of new people who don't. So if I could ask you both to tell us a little about yourselves and how you came to work at the lab. Who wants to go first?
You got here first, Grumpity. You should do that.
I didn't really get here first. I came to the lab by way of the product engine, which is an outsourcing company that Linden has been working with for a long time. I was working for this company for a little while, and I got this project working with Second Life, and my boss was like, I think you're going to really find this interesting. It seems to be up your alley and should fit your personality. And I was like, what is this thing? What are you talking about? And when we first came in, it was overwhelming and complex, and took me really quite some time to figure out what is going on in this product. And at first I was exposed just to the viewer, I know some of you are going to send me hate, but we were working on viewer 2. I will preface this. I know. I will preface this by saying that we were implementing work that was given to us. Product Engine was not tasked with coming up with the design for Viewer 2. But nonetheless, I will take your hate. You can bring it on. You know, around the lab, we used to have a joke that we should have released Viewer 2 as a third-party viewer, and then everybody would have liked it a lot more.
Yeah.
Anyway, my company tried to throw a few other projects at me throughout the years. I started in 2009, and it just, none of them stuck. I think I either sabotaged them or just, I won't say for sure. But regardless, I was like, this Second Life project, I'm really keen on it. We'll just keep doing that. And eventually I couldn't resist and became a Linden. And that was 3.5 years ago now, which is pretty awesome. It's been wonderful, and I love it, and I couldn't be prouder of the things we're doing here.
That's brilliant. And Oz, how about you?
Well, let's see. I spent a great many years doing network protocols development of a whole bunch of different kinds, all the sort of low-level work that no one notices except when it doesn't work, and worked my way up to working on web servers and later internet telephony, voice over IP technology, and when that company got bought by a bigger one, which got bought by a bigger one, I found myself in this kind of extremely corporate world that was no fun, and started looking around for a job that was a lot more fun. And a former colleague of mine was doing research at the lab and noticed that I had developed a lot of experience with running open source projects, and the lab invited me to come in and do kind of try to get the open source viewer program back on track. And so I came and did that, and that was a great challenge. And I just sort of, as the amount of work that required went down a little bit, as the relationship with third-party viewers transitioned from hostile or antagonistic to actively collaborative, I picked up other responsibilities at the lab here and there, and that gradually evolved into running Second Life engineering, which is my current role.
Right.
So it's which is really, the best team I've ever had, and the most fun I've ever had at work. Really, just an endlessly fascinating place.
And Oz really is an awesome boss to his team. Since I don't report to him, I have no conflict of interest saying this. Since Oz took charge of engineering for Second Life, I've watched the team just grow so much stronger and have a kind of purpose and really rally around him. So it's been fantastic.
Am I right in thinking you took over as head of engineering roughly around the time that quite a few people split off to Sansar? Or did it come earlier than that?
Very, very roughly. I mean, that was not a single point in time, right? It was there were people sort of bleeding off of, shifting more and more of their time to Sansar over a fairly large period. But it was around the time we really ramped up the staffing on Sansar very quickly, and the amount of commitment that we could expect from the people who were working on Sansar was going down. And to Grumpity's point about my team, originally that was just the core. What I was taking over was just a small team within engineering that was doing the simulator and viewer development, basically. And what I did was went around and talked to people and said, I want to stay on Second Life. I want people who want to stay on Second Life, who are committed to the product, who are engaged with the product. And those are the people I got. And there's no better way to start a team than having people who care about the product they're working on. And that's what I've got, and I've still got them, and I've added more people since then for related functions. But that's been the big criteria for adding people to the team, whether internally or externally, is you want to be engaged with Second Life, and you want to make Second Life into a better thing than it has ever been, and that's what we do all day long.
I certainly feel that there was a lot of concern when people were clearly moving off to do Sansar, but it seemed to me there was a kind of shift because of your dedication, individually and as a group. And we've seen some huge boosts since that happened in Second Life.
I'm very proud of the progress we've made. I can't nearly take credit for all of it, but that's, we just have such an excellent team that it's we get ideas from everyone who's involved, and we have just a tremendous level of commitment.
So, what aspects of your job would you say you love most? What sort of thing, when you turn to it and go, oh goody, I'm going to do this?
Let's see.
Profit and losses, clearly.
What?
I'm kidding.
The best part about it is that nearly every feature request or bug report that we get teaches me something about the product that I didn't know before, or about how people are using it that I didn't know before. Having big part of my motivation as an engineer has always been to build things people will use, and to see the tremendous breadth and depth of the different ways people use Second Life, and the different ways that it is a part of their lives, of their complete lives, is just endlessly reinforcing. I just constantly am validated by how passionately people care about what we do, and how engaged they are, and how creative they are with using it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times. It's a routine event for us to get a bug report that says, I've been doing this combined with that and layered onto this other thing for years, and it's worked beautifully, and I do all this neat stuff with it, and we read it and say, wow, we had no idea that would work.
And then we have whole long conversations about they did what? Wow.
Yeah, and that's really the best part, is just constantly seeing the great stuff people are doing. I mean, I'm not an artist, for example. I didn't even, properly speaking, put this avatar together, but I got a lot of help. But the just seeing the things people do and seeing how creative they are and how just the incredible level of quality that people have achieved here is just amazing to me.
Your avatar is actually inspired by your son, isn't it?
Well, he's much more artistic than I am, so I did the sort of first pass and then handed it to him and said, see how much you can make this face look like mine. And I got back something that looked, well, to my eye, looked a great deal older than I thought I looked. So, that was maybe not a great choice, but I stuck with it anyway.
Children are a double-edged sword.
Well, I think it's brilliant, and I think it's great to have a story like that behind your avatar.
It's
Absolutely.
fun. Yeah.
I
I do get grief for not doing makeovers frequently enough, but I don't do that in real life either, so that's the way it goes.
You can just say, at least I'm not a stick figure.
So, would you agree with, is that what kind of inspires you too, seeing what people can do with what you make, your engineering?
I was going to say Oz totally stole my answer. But it's true, and we actually, I'm not pandering, and I realize it sounds a little cheesy, but we really do frequently wax poetic at our wonder and amazement at what Second Life residents and kind of the sum of the individual contributions can accomplish. And sometimes it's not always positive. But most of the time it truly is. And time after time we work on something and we think this thing we're working on is going to be used in a certain way. And then we put it out, and the breadth of application is so much wider, and we are just blown away every time. And so one of the more rewarding parts of the job, in addition to just seeing what this world continues to create, is the time we spend thinking about how best to do something for everyone. Because we know that there are communities. What's fascinating about Second Life is that there are a ton of small communities, and each group of, say, 30 people is using Second Life in a different way, which makes it a very difficult task to do something that pleases everyone. But we really spend a lot of time thinking about how to do a little something for everyone, or a lot for everyone, depending on how successful we are.
I imagine, the flip side of what you like best would be what is most challenging. And I guess that's what's most challenging, that must be a bit, when it comes to engineering, what's that game called? Jenga, where you pull out pieces until the tower collapses. And it must be a bit like that, because people have built things in, and if you try and change something, it can have an impact that you've probably never thought of. Has that tended to happen, or is it fairly straightforward?
I don't know if I quite think of it that way. I think of it more as rebuilding the railroad from the moving train.
Like a silent movie. Yes.
Yeah. We're trying to find ways to sort of make the tower broader and stronger, and preserve all of the things it used to support while allowing it to do new stuff, right? The backwards compatibility commitment that we have here is much greater than anywhere I've ever worked on, anything I've ever worked on before. In most normal products, products I've worked on, you need to worry about supporting 2 or 3 releases back of whatever the product was, and after that you can just tell people you have to upgrade. We try to keep, at least at the level of what's already exists in world, we try to keep everything that has ever happened working. Now, that's not always possible, and it's certainly not a goal to keep every old viewer working, because that would really constrain us to the point where we wouldn't be able to do anything very interesting. We try not to break anything, no matter what we're introducing that's new. And that's a big challenge. That was part of the motivation for Sansar, was to be able to set that aside to be able to make big leaps. That's a perfectly legitimate decision for the company to make, and it had a lot of good effects. But it's beyond. Second Life has a different goal, right? We want to keep the world that people have working.
I'm just trying to make sure that everyone's still on the call. Sorry, so give me just a sec.
I'm still here.
Yeah, you are.
Yay! I was told that my mic was being picked up from the wrong device.
All right.
So, fixed it.
Yay! Right. So, I was going to ask you, have you both had a chance to see much at the birthday?
I will admit that I had grand plans, and then I spent the last 3 days really sick, so I didn't get too much of anything. I'm super excited that I got my voice back for today, though.
I'm glad you did too, yes. People kept saying, you ought to ask Grumpity about that, and I was thinking, if she can.
Yeah.
I can handle it.
I'm glad I don't have to. I spent a bunch of time there. What was it, Tuesday? Just wandering around. I didn't see nearly as much of it as I'd like to, so I'm hoping to get back there again real soon. But it's been a very, very busy week.
I'm planning on taking one of the podcar tours, because those are brilliant. They tell you about the places you're passing, and you can hop off and then hop back on, and they're really cool.
I've had a few people tell me that those are great, so I probably should try to do that.
And also, when you're sitting in a podcar, of course, you're less lagged, which is helpful.
Okay.
There's no lag in Second Life.
Not if you're a stick figure. You can probably just smoothly sail through life.
But rather, if your movements are jerkier, it's not as noticeable.
Okay, so what I want to ask you about is the roadmap, because there are some things on the roadmap that are clearly in your area. And I do want to ask you a bit about that. The two that I'm thinking about specifically are Animesh and something called Bakes on Mesh. And I was wondering if you can explain what they are a bit, and also what impact they're meant to have. For example, I'm thinking how baked on mesh will compare to the appliers that many creators are currently using to finesse their designs for mesh bodies.
Right. Well, let's see. The sort of short form description of those two projects is pretty straightforward. Bakes on mesh. When we introduced the ability to add mesh attachments and people immediately began using it for mesh body parts, which we didn't necessarily expect, but what broke was the fact that we or became more difficult was the entire texture-based clothing and appearance system that we had for the system avatars didn't apply to the couldn't be used with mesh bodies, right? If you had replaced your hands with mesh hands, then putting a tattoo layer on that should have put a nice bindi tattoo on your right hand didn't do it. All right, so you didn't get the nice bindi tattoo that you had spent money on Marketplace for. What we wanted to do was enable some hybrid use of the old textured clothing system, even if you're using mesh body parts or mesh anything, right? And so we have worked on a project to extend that capability, and in the process, it turns out we're adding some new body part types that are more broadly applicable. So that's coming along pretty well. It's turned out to be a more complicated project than we thought it was initially, and it's taken a little longer, but it's making progress, and we're getting there. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from content creators. How it relates to appliers is a more complicated question, and I don't think we've fully resolved it yet. So that's still an area where we're studying what the best way to handle it is. That is, if we had that from the beginning, I don't think appliers would ever have existed. The question becomes then, is it, to what extent do we want to maintain the model that appliers have done, or can we effectively replace it with technology that's basically doesn't require scripting and doesn't require a HUD and so forth. So we're still working on that aspect of it to some extent. The Animesh project is more a normal outgrowth of what we've been doing with avatars for a long time. Avatars are, whether they're mesh body parts or the original system avatar, they're a mesh, right? They're a surface that is deformed by the fact that the points on the surface are weighted to points to joints on a skeleton, and the animation system allows you to move that skeleton around and provide sequences of movements for it, and that makes avatars able to move in interesting and amusing and sometimes natural ways, right? We've never had that for other kinds of in-world objects. Avatars are the only things that had skeletal animation. Needless to say, Second Life users didn't let that stop them from creating animated objects. They just had to do it through a variety of different accommodations, right? They had to. Sometimes you could do it by rotating body parts, but it turns out you don't get. For example, if you had built a model of a person or an animal, and you moved the thigh, you rotated the hip joint so that the thigh moves backwards, that wouldn't necessarily move the shin in a natural way because there's not a skeleton tying those two things together. By extending the ability to use the avatar skeleton in objects that are not avatars, we give those rigged mesh objects the ability to move in all the interesting ways that an avatar can move. And you can apply that kind of animation to many different things. That should be far more performant in the long run than the workarounds that people have put in place, like having many different shapes. You know, I used to have, I still have in my inventory, haven't rezzed her in a while, a very, very cool dog that runs around and looks pretty natural, but each of the legs is actually several different legs, some of which are invisible at any given time, and only one is visible. So what looks like the leg moving is really is doing sort of flipbook animation by making different body parts visible. This will be much more performant and much more natural looking.
Yeah, I'm just trying, and I'm not sure if I can here because the thing that doesn't exist. I think I've managed it. This is my pet unicorn, miniature unicorn that wanders around Fantasy Fair with me as a zebracorn. Isn't it cute?
It is adorable.
That's made by Echo's Song of Culprit, and she is dying for Animesh. She's just longing for Animesh and has promised to make me one in Animesh when it comes in, which I'm looking forward to. Although I love this one.
You know, Animesh is on Agni as of yesterday.
Yeah.
And with a project viewer, it's all possible. Although I really hope nobody is selling any Animesh yet, because that would be a bad idea. Don't pay money for Animesh. It's still a project.
We, you know, just so that people are aware, right? If you see a new feature and its viewer says, the viewer that has that new feature says it's a project viewer, and you get a different color menu bar in a project viewer, that means that the feature's not finished yet, and that whole spiel I gave about maintaining backwards compatibility with things does not apply, right? The reason we do project viewers and similar things on Aditi for the simulator side is that we are not yet sure that we have reached the point in the project that we're willing to maintain backwards compatibility with everything that is created with that project.
Right.
And so we, you know, that's a good when it becomes a release candidate viewer and later the default release viewer, that means we've reached that point. We think we're good, and content created to be compatible with it should remain compatible in the future.
Brilliant. So people shouldn't expect to be buying Animesh unicorns or anything else for a while yet.
Watch for the change in the viewer status. Right, exactly.
And oh my god, Kindle X, there goes that use case we didn't consider.
We can all get our favourite Linden now standing in our houses. I want to make a dancing Tawley Linden. You see? The residents will always come up with uses you never thought of.
I hope that's the worst of it.
You could have a dinner party of Lindens sitting permanently in your house. That could be quite fun.
Well, it'll be confusing.
Yes. I was going to... There's another area I want to ask about, but I wanted to ask about something that came up yesterday. And the way you've been talking about HUDs and how HUDs get used. Something we were talking about yesterday was the possibility of floating windows outside the viewer. So that, you know, if you are one of those people who have two screens, you could actually pull out your inventory window and just have it on the side on your other screen, like you can do with Adobe products.
Right. The short answer is we haven't got that yet. obviously, and we're not quite working on it. We do have some ideas about one way that it might be possible. That would be new and different, and it's on the list of projects to spend some exploratory time on. Fairly often, we need to do some kind of proof of concept for a project. We can't just, and we did this very early, for example, in the Bento projects, where we're adding a lot of new bones to the avatar. So the very first thing we did before we even began talking about it, even under NDA, to residents, was we added 100 bones to the avatar that were just basically a set of 10 tentacles that stuck off the avatar in weird directions. That's the goal was not to make it look good. The goal was not to make it useful. It was just to be able to assess, if we add this many bones to the avatar, what's going to happen, right? Are we going to crash all the other viewers? Are we going to crash the simulator? Will we burn up everybody's graphics card just by even attempting it? And we did it was a number of weeks worth of work to just prove that in fact it was possible to add more bones to the avatar without doing really extreme damage. And in fact, we did find ways where we could have crashed all the viewers in the world, and so we snuck fixes into the current work we were doing that fixed all of those things, and we got them out as fast as we could, and we told the third-party viewers that they should all make sure they pick up those fixes. And
hey, look, another reason why you should stay current with reviewer version.
Exactly. So, but it was that early proof of concept that we had done. We have some thoughts about how to do independent windows that we hope might work out well, but we haven't yet done that exploratory project where we see if the idea will actually play out. This is one of those cases, we draw our own user interface. We don't use the system menu primitives for putting up menus. We don't use system controls. So extending our own user interface development system to support multiple windows would be a big, big job. It just wasn't designed with that in mind. So we're going to have to try and find a way to finesse that. But it's definitely on the interesting ideas list, and we have some ideas about how it might be possible, but it hasn't quite risen to the level of something we can spend the time on to do that proof of concept.
Right.
We always have way more to do than we have time for.
Although we applaud Firestorm for doing that proof of concept in the past.
Yeah, that was a slightly different approach.
Yeah, that was an April Fool.
Well, except it was an April Fool that partly worked.
Okay, I'm just going to say something to the audience now. Several people have IM'd me asking about land pricing, and grandfathered sims and things like that. I'm afraid that Oz and Grumpity are here to talk about engineering and the technical side. And
no, not at all. We are happy to talk about land pricing as well.
Are you? Okay, because
Yes.
I'm getting lots of questions about things like grandfathered sims. Will you get another chance to buy into them? And at the moment, I've been asking people to contact Patch or Kira, so I can ask you things about cloud servers and so on.
Sure, and I think what we can do is continue as planned, and if there's time at the end, we can try to answer some of the land questions and save all of the unpleasantness that may remain for Patch.
Yeah, okay. Right.
It's your show, Safia. You run it the way you want to.
Absolutely.
I want to get as much out of you about engineering and technology and the techie side as I can, because it's fascinating.
Wait, and what am I going to do here?
You do that too, don't you?
Sort of. I am the director of product, which means that I'm not involved directly in the engineering. Oz and I partner, and we actually have what we call the Hydra, or the Troika, and that is Patch, Oz, and I, and we work together to make most of the important and meaningful decisions about Second Life, so you can spread the hate around as well as the love. And obviously each one of us has our areas of responsibility. And engineering is definitely Oz's.
Grumpity sets our priorities. She tells us what we should be doing, and I figure out how we do it.
Well, I've got a question here from Alaska Udimo, who's asking, what are your views on Firestorm and the reliability of their team's product?
Let's see. I'm not sure what the reliability of their product implies. I think that Firestorm has done some phenomenal work. The fact that they have such a large fraction of the Second Life user base using their viewer as their primary viewer is a testament to the quality of their work. They have somewhat different priorities than we do. They don't need to worry as much about the initial user experience as we do. They can assume a higher level of familiarity with and a greater comfort with setting a zillion different options than we're comfortable with. On the other hand, a lot of things that they've developed, we're happy to integrate into our viewer, and we do that fairly often.
And I just want to add that we have a very symbiotic relationship with the Firestorm team, and we work closely with them. Obviously, they pay close attention to the work we are doing, and frequently contribute back the changes that they've made and participate in discussions about whether a certain feature will fit in the Second Life viewer, or whether it's better because of a specificity of that feature to remain in just the Firestorm viewer. In general, there's just this really positive energy with how the third-party viewer community works together, and together with Linden.
I'd also just call out for special attention the Firestorm support volunteer team. They are phenomenal at alerting us to problems that have come up with a new release or a new simulator or whatever it is. It's not at all unusual for the first quality reports of an ongoing problem that are out there on the grid to be coming to us through the Firestorm support team, and we really appreciate the fact that they do that, and they do a good job of sort of triaging the issue and understanding what exactly it is, and they're a huge help.
I've got some really good people over there, like Worley and Beck.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, we're getting some questions in, and I would, I think, Alaska, they've kind of answered what would be stopping you from wanting to acquire them someday to merge their tools into yours. I think actually having multiplicity helps development. Would that be true?
I've always thought so. I mean, we get contributions from many of the third-party viewers. We've just kicked off a project with the author of the Black Dragon viewer to integrate a feature that he did some months ago, and we're gonna be incorporating that into the labs viewer. We get fixes from most of the third-party viewer projects regularly, and that's a great thing. So having that diversity out there and having different viewers that serve different audiences is great.
I think the overarching answer is it's doing what open source is supposed to do, and we are happy to foster that.
Great. Now, someone is saying that Kenny Lux is saying he still often runs into GFX crashes. Is there any way to stop crashes server side?
Ultimately not. You know, one of the things that's kind of amazing is if I run the statistics report that we have for what graphics cards are Second Life users using. What are the most popular graphics cards in Second Life? The last time I did that, it was probably some months ago, but the most popular graphics card in Second Life was just barely over 1% of the users, and most of them were way below 1/4%. That's how many different ones there are. There are literally thousands of different graphics cards that people are using.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, you know, there are going to be different vulnerabilities in those that there's just no way we could possibly anticipate and filter out. So there are lots of things we've done. The whole Jelly Doll project was eliminated an entire class of graphics crashers, but it's a big, complicated undertaking, and there are lots of vulnerabilities in drivers and hardware even that we can't possibly anticipate all of them.
I've got a question. Apple from Laban Core. Apple recently announced that OpenGL is depreciated and will no longer support it in future operating system releases. Since the Second Life client is dependent on OpenGL technology, this will mean that Mac users will be unable to access Second Life in the near future. Has Linden Lab made any contingency plans to ensure that OX10 will continue to run in Second Life, including perhaps converting the SL client to Metal, Apple's OpenGL replacement?
Well, the short answer is we're not sure yet, except that we will find a way to continue to support Macs.
Right.
Exactly how is something that we're spending a fair amount of energy on. And in fact, we were looking at some of those possibilities even before that announcement, well before that announcement, in fact. So while it's an area that we're concerned about, we don't think that it's something to panic about, and it is definitely something we're going to find a way to do. So there are a couple of alternatives. When some of the current rendering projects that we've got in the pipeline now are finished, which should happen over the next couple of months, then we will devote a good deal more energy to exploring those alternatives and picking one. But we have a couple different alternatives already mapped out that one or another of them is sure to allow us to continue supporting Macs. Most of us at the lab run Macs, and you're not going to tear mine away from me. So if I'm going to be able to get in world, we're going to have to find ways to support Macs.
Right.
That's right. A much larger percentage of Lindens use Macs than our overall user base.
So you have got an interest in keeping them going.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. Now I've had a question from Holoclark Henley, who says, my friend uses Singularity to keep lag down, and we've noticed animations coming out for Bento, which only really influence hand movements, but result in the entire animation not functioning. Is this due to scripting on their part, or does Bento animation involve a holistic approach to scripts where this is unavoidable, save using a Bento-ready viewer?
I really can't comment on what Singularity supports or doesn't support, or how how it works. I know it is possible to create animations in a way that causes them to control bones they don't need to control. That is, you can include bones you're not moving in the animation, and that's not really the right way to do it.
Right.
So it's without seeing a specific example and digging into why it behaves the way it does on the viewer you're seeing it on, I really couldn't guess.
Okay. Do you have any... Oh, there's a couple of questions coming on that, so I'm just going to circle back to that. Will you be able to fix the negative value bug that keeps from using aligned textures and synchronized materials? There seems to be a negative value bug.
I don't remember. I know that there are some places where aligning textures on materials doesn't work quite right. That they're on the list of which of those this particular question is referring to. I can't guess. We would like to sort out as much of that as we possibly can, but that isn't something we're working on at the moment.
Something we talked about, I talked about with Patch and Kira, I think, was that whether people should set up JIRAs or contact you directly with questions like that.
Say it with Jira. Jira is the best way to have your issues heard. They are triaged every day, sometimes on weekends when certain dedicated Lindens can't tear themselves away. And it is actually the best way to have your issues seen by multiple eyes, because there's a team that does the triage, and then they bring in additional people as necessary. Bug reports are triaged pretty much every weekday, and feature requests are triaged once a week. And it is absolutely the best way to have your issue seen. You may end up not agreeing with the resolution of the issue.
Okay. So Indie Melody, who asked me that question, maybe you should start a JIRA on it. Okay.
I should add one thing to what Grumpity said. It is, as in any community of people develops its own vocabulary, right? And Second Life users are far from an exception to that. There are lots of things that we all expect everyone in Second Life to be able to understand. But it has been my experience that when people find problems, they assign them names, right? Like the negative value bug. That name isn't something that I have a referent for, right? I don't have a label. I don't have a paragraph anywhere that says the negative value bug is this one, right? And gives me a detailed description of what you do, what the results of what you do are expected to be, and how the actual results differ from that. And those are the prompts you get when you file a bug report. What did you do? What did you expect to have happen when you did that? What actually happened when you did that? And then, why is that important? That's why filing JIRAs is really important, because it provides that common referent. And when you're writing them up, be careful to read it back, and maybe read it to somebody who doesn't go into Second Life and see if they understand it. Then you've probably got enough information.
That's going a little too far, Oz. I think you're setting the bar a bit too high. Yeah, I think rereading it yourself, rereading. Well, what we don't want to do is, scare people away from filing JIRA, but just reread it to yourself and go, does this make sense to a person who's not me?
Right.
Okay, someone said, could we have a more user-friendly JIRA? The current one is very hard to use for many users. I think...
We're working on that, actually.
Good.
We're a couple of versions behind, and in Jira releases, and some of the things we had to do to integrate it with being able to use your Second Life account to log into it turned out not to be easy to port to the newer versions, and we're making progress on that. Get the newer version, it will at least look better.
Oh, and Beck Janus, who I mentioned earlier, has just come through with Jira about the negative bug to look at. I'll just put that in to chat for people.
Okay.
There is one, and Beck says that's the one. And it was raised by Worley. So.
Well, can't trust that one.
Okay. Couple of questions I've had about uploading mesh that are first of all, are there any plans to upload meshes with custom rigs? And Asriel Drumheller says, from what I understand now, the Animesh uses the default AVI skeleton, unless he understands it wrong. And Laurie TV says that I see I can upload a mesh direct from Marvelous Designer to Sansar. Is there a chance that the Linden Lab can change the clothes upload here in Second Life to this function too?
I'm not familiar with what Sansar did to make that possible, so I can't guess. It's not something we've worked on, but it's probably, at least in theory, possible. But I'm
Oz always says is, anything is possible, it's just code.
Okay, so
the question is, is it more important than everything else we have to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if we can see a case for making that a priority versus some other work, then we could focus our attention there. Between us girls, I don't really see that as a top priority right now, but things may change.
Right. People seem to be shouting out here in the getting excited about the idea. Drakis has just shouted MD to SL would be great. Integrated rigging for clothes, says Morrigan. Maybe, folks, you want to file a JIRA and support each other. Just a random suggestion here.
Wow, Sophia, how did you come up with that idea?
Grumpity, I have to say, you are sounding so like Emma Stone.
It's very short-lived.
I'm not sure if it's your regular voice, but it's very cool. Okay. Silas has said, just install Sansar and go into the lookbook, put on MD clothes, and hit simulate. Grumpity, you will be convinced. Grumpity putting on clothes.
I've got a neck scarf, excuse me. I did have hair for Bit the Linden's bald, so excuse me. I wear things occasionally.
Okay.
So it is a good idea in theory, but in practice, there are things that are more difficult to do in Second Life than they are in Sansar. And part of the reason that Sansar exists is because Linden Lab recognized that there were a lot of things that were difficult to build into a 15-year platform, despite the amazing strides that we've been making year after year. There are some advantages that Second Life has over Sansar, but there are others that Sansar has over Second Life that we will never be able to implement. And these two platforms are different. They complement each other, and we certainly look over the wall to each other and talk. But it's not necessarily true that we'll be able to bring everything over that Sansar is working on.
So, for example, with that particular feature, if we were to get a well put together feature request asking for that, when we triaged it, we'd probably go hunt down whoever did that for Sansar and say, how did you do it? And if it turns out that what they did was something that we could incorporate, that would reduce the difficulty of doing it, and maybe we'd be able to do something good. But not having had that conversation yet.
Okay. Some other questions that have come up earlier in the week that we want to refer to you guys. Could Second Life develop a mobile app?
Ooh.
It's just software.
It's definitely a conversation we're having, and it's an interesting one to us. It's certainly on the table.
Yeah,
right.
there are some pretty real challenges, but there are definitely some features that we could do, and we're exploring what the possibilities are there, and be listening. We'll have something to say about that at some point.
Sorry, Grumpity, go on.
Oh, there's kind of a conversation we're having, right? Because there are different ways that Second Life could be used on mobile. One is a companion app where you just do things in between your desktop visits, and another is kind of a standalone experience where you could actually attempt to present all of Second Life to a new user and see whether that is a compelling enough experience for people to stay in Second Life. And those are really very different challenges, and the experience on a mobile is so small that, 4 corners, for example, 4 regions stuck together is really difficult to convey. So what does it truly look like? Does it look like a smaller room where you sit down or, can move around in a limited space? And those are kind of larger questions that we're considering. But we're thinking about it quite a bit.
I think the number of HUDs and windows that I have open, kind of on a 28-inch screen, I don't see that much of Second Life because there's so many things going on. I'm just wondering how much I would see. I think it would just be HUD on top of HUD on top of HUD on a mobile phone.
Absolutely. And so there are intermediate mobile devices as well, right? I think a tablet is much more palatable than just a mobile phone, but then there's phablets and a lot of things in between. There are solutions today, right? There's a streaming solution from Bright Canopy. It's not cheap, but the quality of the rendering you get on your phone or on your tablet is super impressive, as if you paid for a gaming rig. But there are other difficulties there. So each particular approach has some complexity, and we're trying to find kind of an optimal solution.
Yes, there's also Lumia. And is Radagast still going? Because you can get text.
It is.
Yeah. Kenny Luck says, I want to be able to have land manager tools for mobile. I want to be able to eject users from my land even when I'm not in Second Life. A mobile app would be useful.
Indeed.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you can restart your region from the web. We're pretty happy about that one.
Feature launched, just last week? Beginning of this week?
Last week.
Last week, yeah.
So there you go, Kenny Lux. You've now got a way of ejecting people.
A hammer. Yeah, you just eject
Yeah,
everyone.
you've got a hammer.
It's a very big hammer.
Yeah. So, presumably estate managers can do it. You don't just have to be the owner. If you're an estate manager, you can do that. Kenny
I
says
think not, actually.
he has mainland area, so he can't restart it.
Right. That you need support for still.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Related to this question of the mobile app, would you consider trying a web viewer idea again in the future, like SL Go?
Well, if we did a mobile app that was based on a streaming solution, it would be very little extra work to also support that through a web browser. Maybe even no extra work. If we decided to do one, the other more or less comes for free.
Right.
And we've done that experiment 3 or 4 times now, and Bright Canopy, in effect, continues to do that experiment, and they do have users using it. So that actually exists today. When you do that, I mean, Grumpity said before, you get rendering as though you had bought a really great gaming rig. Well, the reason that you get rendering that's as though you got a great gaming rig is that you're renting a great gaming rig, right? And today, the price of that is such that we don't think it would be attractive to a large number of people. You would be spending too much money on gaming rig. There's plenty of reason to believe that the prices on that for that kind of capability will continue to go down. They have been for the last couple of years, and when they get to a point where it's something that we think is gonna have traction with a significant user population, then we'll do it.
Fantastic. Next question. I'm taking this from the live streaming. It's just a question. Can you engineer lower tier?
I'm not sure what the question means.
If you mean lower prices for land,
yeah.
I think we have proven that we can.
Yes.
And I would hold that we have continuously shown our intent to lower the prices for land, and we have seen a very positive response. There's one particular graph I look at, for example, that shows resident-owned mainland, and it warms my heart every day since the middle of May.
Yes.
And we are very happy with the response we got for mainland, and we are looking forward to a similar response on private estates, which are dropping in price as of July 2nd. So, yes, we absolutely can and intend to continue down that path. Of course, assuming that we see that this is something that our economy is benefiting from. And I don't just mean our bottom line, I mean the entire Second Life economy.
Yes. Yes, and everyone benefits. I've just been asked about more fantasy neighbourhoods for premium houses. I presume that means Linden homes. I think you should be looking hopefully at Patch for that, because Patch and Kira are working on the new Linden homes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely in their area.
Yeah.
So what we do know is that there is work happening on Linden homes, but exactly how things will look, you're going to have to hold on to find out.
We've had this question come up several times, and the answer is, I think, well, I'll let you make the answer. Someone has just asked, would it be possible to have variable sizes and by a 128 by 128 region?
Well, I mean, I don't know about that specific example, one way or the other. It's definitely something we'd like to be able to support. It's not something that's a small project. It turns out that 256 by 256 is kind of baked into an awful lot of Second Life, it's a considerable amount of work to work at it. We've done some exploration of it. One of the things that is interesting about our ongoing project to move Second Life from a data center that we own and run to the cloud is that our ability to adjust the size and power of the hardware we're running any given thing on will be enormously increased, right? Right now we have a few different types of systems, and we can choose, this product or this service runs on this kind of a box, and we only have 4 or 5 choices of what that box can be and how many things can be on it. Once we've moved to a fully cloud-centric deployment model, we will have a hugely larger range of choices available. So we'll be able to get both smaller systems than we have now and much, much bigger ones. And we'll be able to sort of tune things up and down to get the behavior we want out of each one. So it's not out of the question in the future that we might offer smaller regions or even larger ones, but it's not on the short-term road. It's not one of the 15 things we're trying to deliver this year.
Right. Another couple of questions. I want to come back to the cloud rendering to not ask you to explain it, but will there be developments in the rendering? People have asked this.
Well, there have been. We were fortunate this year to be able to take one of the former Second Life rendering developers who had moved to Sansar for a while, and we convinced him to come back. And he's doing great things. So we just put out, was it release before last, was a whole package of rendering fixes, that some of which had been in development for a long time.
And this, I want to say, this is a joint effort between a product engine developer and some third-party developers, and of course our newly stolen back Linden.
Right. So that has the immediate answer is we're already doing it. In terms of new rendering features, what we're calling the EAT project, Enhanced Environment Project, which is one of our focuses right now, is going to include some new atmospheric effects, volumetric lighting effects that are not currently available. So you'll be able to do those in your environment, and that's all new renderer work. And we're also doing a project to we're well along in a project to completely revamp the texture caching system, which in order to improve the performance. So yeah, we're definitely making a lot of changes to rendering, and we'll be continuing to do so.
I did have one question about that. Will we be able to set different wind, light, sky settings for different altitudes?
Yes.
Yay!
We'll have
so much more.
Yeah, we'll have 4 layers. So you'll be able to set basically ground, 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, and 3,000 meters. You'll be able to set wind light settings for each of those levels.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that's I know that's one that's actually an example of a feature that we had not planned to do, and by engaging with content developers early in the project, we became convinced that actually that was something we ought to do. So we did it. We extended the project.
Brilliant. Okay. Will there be a possibility of having the Oculus Rift viewer back?
At this point, the performance that we've been able to get out of the Second Life renderer is just not good enough to avoid making people sick. We can hope that we will be able to improve that, and that the cost and complexity of the headset devices out there, whether it's the Rift or one of its competitors, will continue to improve. And of course, graphics cards get better and cheaper all the time. Eventually, we can hope that those lines will get close enough together that it's worth doing. But our early experiments with that really didn't get close enough to make it feel like that was a wise use of our development time.
And ultimately, our early experiments were too early, and we were kind of bitten by doing it as an early adopter. So I think we're, twice shy about this now. But truly, the nausea to coolness ratio is just not quite there. However, I see that there are still about 30 people a month who are logging in with the old Rift viewer, and more power to them. I want to know if they're taking Dramamine or what. And if somebody wanted to contribute code to suddenly take away the nausea, we would certainly be happy to consider it.
Okay. So I wanted to come on to the whole business of the cloud servers. Someone has just asked a quick thing. Will it be possible to make 3D videos, not just pictures? That sounds complicated to me.
I think that would require everything that supporting the headsets would require, and then some. So that would surprise me.
Someone has just asked if there are any plans to link up all the continents besides Syndra.
Not that I've heard, but that's more a Patch question than than one for us.
Okay.
Land is his thing.
Skewer asks Ask Patch, who is probably kicking someone in the background at the moment because we keep sending questions to him. Okay.
Oh, Patch loves hard questions.
Right.
Right.
Now,
Yeah, totally.
I'm going to come to the one that I want to ask about cloud servers. Everyone talks about cloud servers like, wow, this is going to be so fantastic. What is it? I mean, what's the difference between having servers in the cloud and server farms remotely? Because they have to have a presence somewhere. What's the difference? Can you explain it to me, and why it's going to be so much better and how it's going to help us?
Well, the simplest explanation is that the servers we're running most of Second Life on now, we had to buy, right? We had to go and look at what server offerings there were out there in the world. We had to do a lot of testing and qualifying of those of each of those different server types, and then we had to buy a lot of them and put them in racks in a data center that we pay rent and power and air conditioning for, and network connectivity and all of that. and I have to sign those bills every month now, so I know what that amounts to. And we kind of reached the point a little while ago where some of the stuff we're running Second Life on today is now far enough behind that it was time to think about, well, we need to define a new generation of servers. And we need to go out there and go through that big process of qualifying what hardware we're going to buy and testing it and negotiating about prices for it and then buying a whole bunch of them and stacking them all up. And just that conversion process is a big, expensive project, right? Today, it's not really necessary to go through that. Amazon and Google and Microsoft are all doing that all day long, every day. They have teams bigger than all of Linden Lab doing just that over and over and over and over again. They're doing it for us, and we can just rent the results. And they're all very good at it. So we'll gain by moving from our current model to putting it on a cloud service or services. We'll be able to essentially take advantage of the fact that they're doing that work for us on a continuous basis, and we can just say, well, you know, this particular region type or this new product offering that we're going to roll out isn't getting quite the performance we want. Instead of having to go out and find and test and buy a new generation of hardware to solve that problem, we'll just be able to go to the catalog of stuff from our cloud providers and say, yeah, that one looks right. Check that box. Now we're moved. Right? So that's the most immediate benefit. But that also means that we have more flexibility, right? Right now, the vast majority of all the servers that run Second Life are in a single data center in Phoenix, outside Phoenix, Arizona, right? I was just there recently. Kind of interesting. It's the first time I've been there in, over 8 years. It was boring. It's a room full of computers, right? It doesn't look like much. But you can't by moving to the cloud, we can not only adjust what kind of machines we have and how we're using them, but we can adjust where they are, right? Some of the performance problems that people have, I mean, users in New Zealand or Australia or the Far East or even some areas of the world that all have similar problems, right? There's speed of light delay, right? It takes a certain number of nanoseconds to get signals from one side of the planet to the other, and there's nothing we can do to solve that, right? Einstein said that's the limit. We can't do better. But if we are on a cloud service, we can just say, we want these machines, these instances of these services to be located in a data center in Canberra or in Seoul or right, Nairobi, wherever it is that our cloud provider has a data center, we can put stuff. And our hope is that that will enable us to provide better service to more of the world. So we'll see. We're making great progress on that project. I mean, it's not as fast as some people would hope, of course, because it never is. But my inventory is being served from a database in the cloud instead of the database in the server in the data center. So some Lindens have their inventory already in a cloud instance of our inventory service. So we're getting there. We're making progress.
It'll be interesting to see how you'll presumably keep the same situation of having people on things like Blue Steel and I can't remember all your names. Or will they will that disappear now?
It's Le Tigre, Blue Steel, Magnum, and then SLS, of course. I think we will still need to have some sort of an RC system to roll out changes to a smaller subset of all of our residents. And this has worked for us very well. Depending on our level of nervousness, we might roll changes out to a snack channel that's just about 10 regions or so. Yeah, there will be some sort of an RC system. Whether it will look exactly the same or not, I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah, we're liable to change various aspects of that, either as part of the cloud project or otherwise. But it's we'll continue to evolve that to make that a more effective test. I mean, the whole purpose of the release channel mechanism is to there's no way we can test everything that users do. There are way too many of you.
Unimaginable.
You are way too imaginative and creative about how you do things. Like I said, it is not at all unusual. In fact, it's common for us to discover that people are doing things with our product we didn't know were possible. So obviously we can't test for those things because we didn't know that they could be done.
Right.
And that's what the release channel mechanism is all about, is just putting it out there and seeing what does well and what doesn't do well. And then if things, we had one a few weeks ago that was kind of unusual where we started rolling it out and regions immediately started crashing. And so we stopped the roll and we reversed it. We said, put back the other stuff. And then we went back and looked at all those crashes to figure out what we'd done wrong. And it turned out to be a relatively straightforward fix, but it was something that people were doing that we hadn't expected to have happen, and so the code wasn't prepared to deal with it. And we can tell our QA to test thoroughly all we want, but if we actually insisted that they tested everything, we'd do a release approximately every million years.
Right. Okay, so when all is moved to the cloud, does that mean we won't have the rolling region restarts on a Tuesday, Wednesday?
Oh, I don't know.
It would probably look a little bit different, but I mean, we'd still have to restart regions.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we've had a lot of
there was one question that we didn't get to. I know Sweet asked several times about what's happening with the marketplace, and I wanted to respond. So you may know that we had a listing on the marketplace for some time for a developer, and that listing has been taken down because we have hired a developer related and get them to wrap their mind around what's going on.
Right. Well, I'm going to say thank you to both of you very much for coming in and talking today. It's been fascinating.
Oh, hey, we love doing this. We're happy to come anytime you need us.
Good. This is very cool, and I think we covered a lot of ground today. I hope that people feel that they've learned stuff. I've certainly learned stuff. Yeah,
it's great fun. We really like to do these.
Okay, we're getting lots of thanks from the audience.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you. Oh gosh, yes, Linden Bears, Grumpity, yours is out on Bear Island now, is it?
I certainly hope so. And I saw a really old Oz Linden Bear on there as well. I think it was 5 years old or so.
That's cool.
I've only done the one.
Wow, Oz!
I have to learn how to make mesh so that I can make an animesh bear. When we first introduced mesh, I said, well, my next bear will be mesh, and I haven't gotten around to it yet. So.
Wouldn't it be cool to have a bear that, is actually quite sinister and doesn't do anything most of the time, and then kind of slowly turns its head and blinks its eyes?
Indeed.
Yeah.
We had one Linden that made one that exploded every now and then.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Bits and pieces of it would fly all over the place. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
My bear has its hair on fire, but it's a permanent state.
Right. Okay. Thank you, both of you, so much for doing this. It's been brilliant. Audience, thank you for coming. Thank you for asking so many brilliant questions.
Thank you, Safia. We really do look forward to these, and thank you for your thoughtful questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, and
thanks, audience. Bye.
Bye.
okay, I'm going to kill my in-world voice now. So thank you.